One, two, three, two, two, three. It's only like, it's the humidity when the humidity hits in July, but where the difference temperature wise only about a 1 to 2, 3 degree difference.
It's not too much different, but
yeah.
No, the nasty stuff is like Colombia and stuff like that. That's the like Colombia, South Carolina. That's just the gross hot.
Yeah, when you start hitting the low country, yeah. So we got some alter egos today.
Yeah, we got some alter egos today. This is welcome, guys. We are doing today Ziggy Stardust, the song, not the album, but we'll talk about the album too, by David Bowie, and Kiss from a Black Widow. Kiss from the Black Widow? Is that the name of it? Kiss
of a Black Widow.
Kiss of a Black Widow. Okay. By RZA / Bobby Digital. So both of them are alter egos-ish. And we're just going to take that conversation and talk about how the songs are put together and kind of see where we go with it.
Yeah.
So you have a preference on where you want to start?
I'm indifferent. This is probably the funkiest pairing that we've done and the most interesting song selection, definitely on the hip hop side. I think this is the first song that I've chosen that isn't a hip hop classic per se.
Right.
But it's one of those things that Wu-Tang fans know this song.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of, the RZA and Old Dirty Bastard are obviously legendary figures in hip hop because they're, 1/2 of the founding and core origin of Wu-Tang Clan.
Okay.
So some of the things that I'm going to contextualize is even RZA's comfort level with ODB. And so you want to start with the...
Yeah, let's start there because this is one of the first songs. This is like the other side of this. Obviously I was not familiar with this. I'd heard the name Bobby Digital before. I didn't know that it was RZA. But I had never heard any of the songs. So I had no context for this at all. I mean, obviously I know who the Wu-Tang Clan is, but I remember the first thing I said to you when I heard the song for the first time was it sounded like ODB was trying to set a record for the most motherfuckers that in the 3-minute song. Like he goes in there. And second thing is I have to be honest, I get in a philosophical sense the significance of the song. You said it was RZA trying on a persona, and ODB maybe this is one of his last verses or last serious verses or whatever, but other than that I don't really get it. So help me out.
No, totally. So I mean, of course, obviously Wu-Tang Clan, well, they're into martial arts flicks.
Yeah.
And comic books.
Okay.
Ghostface Killer alter ego is Tony Stark's Iron Man.
Yeah.
So a lot of people don't know this, and you probably would have to watch the documentary. RZA and Ghostface were roommates.
Okay.
So a lot of the comic book stuff is coming right there from those two.
Okay.
All right.
I'm with you so far. Yeah.
So part of the alter ego that the RZA has created in Bobby Digital is a comic book like character.
Okay.
So Bobby Digital, I don't know exactly who Ziggy Stardust is, but Ziggy Stardust appears to be his bisexual alter ego.
Yeah, he's an androgynous alter ego. Yeah, sure.
Androgynous alter ego, yeah, sure. Was my takeaway from it. Bobby Digital is more like the young, lustful comic book version of RZA.
Okay, so it's like an exaggeration, kind of an amplification of him.
I mean, hyperbolic to some degrees, and this is one of those hyperbolic songs where he literally is taking on comic book sexual aesthetics, where he talks about having intercourse so much that you only bust blood.
Yeah, that's one of the lines that stuck in my head for sure.
Yeah, that's a comic book thing. You know, when you really think about it, it would be. I guess now we would call it anime.
Yeah,
this would be in the anime realm. In terms of visual aid that would be provided on this song. But here's something a lot of people don't know, outside of the sphere of hip hop and Wu-Tang Clan. Well, RZA and Old Dirty Bastard are cousins, first cousins.
Okay.
So they've literally known each other since they were kids. And so one thing that I
You
want
definitely feel that on this song for sure.
that's what I was about to say. One of the beautiful nuances of this record is that how comfortable they are with each other.
That was one of my notes too. It doesn't. It feels like kind of like a scratch freestyle demo kind of thing.
It is.
It's kind of like two friends fucking around in the living room. Like it's not like it doesn't feel like they're in the studio at all. It just feels like two
no,
guys hanging out.
That's actually great and very, very insightful, Andrew, because that's actually exactly what it is. It's a freestyle between two cousins. This is how Wu-Tang Clan started. So the core of Wu-Tang Clan, in terms of their origins, is the RZA, the GZA, and Old Dirty Bastard. They're all related to each other.
Okay.
They're all family members. They're all cousins. Okay.
Okay.
Now, GZA would be the serious one. These two are the jokesters.
Yeah, they're clearly jokesters. Like even if I knew nothing about them before this, you can hear this song and you're like, oh, these guys are just fucking around.
And they're it's almost like they're hyping each other up.
Yeah, exactly.
To do more foolish, to do more foolish, incoherent, cocaine and weed laced induced rants. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's definitely what it feels like. Okay.
Well, this is one, and so this is one of the beautiful things to kind of contextualize some of the origins of Wu-Tang Clan. When I hear this song, I hear, because Bobby Digital is the youth of RZA, so I'm like, oh, some of their early stuff. This is what they used to do: get drunk, get some girls, freestyle.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a good way to contextualize it in terms of helping you understand. As far as Old Dirty Bastard is concerned, I mean, this is one of his last Old Dirty Bastard like Wu-Tang performances. He really doesn't contribute much. To be honest with you, he really doesn't contribute much to the group outside of the first album. Okay. After that, it's sparse. This is one of the last appearances that he actually makes. You know, he does the Nigga Please album, I think, you know, about a year and a half later after this. And RZA did some stuff on there too. But once again, that's family. You know, you really don't see Old Dirty Bastard. I think that was kind of contextualized by Wu-Tang Forever, which came out the year and a half before this. You know, he had been in and out of jail, in a lot of trouble, but this is who Old Dirty Bastard is, because like they say on Enter the Wu-Tang, Method Man says there's no father to his style. So he's on there rapping, he's talking about the way I'm gonna address this style is mad wild.
Like there's nothing like him. Like I mean, I don't have as much context as you do for the world, but I mean, this is one of the first verses. Like, I mean, you hear him on, you know, 36 Chambers and whatever, like coming in and out, whatever. But this is one of the first verses, like whole verses, like that I've actually paid attention to, where he's like doing the whole verse and not just like singing in the background or dicking around or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, but he kind of lets you know what his style is.
Yeah.
He was like, says, my beats are funky, my rhymes are smoky. Well, motherfuckers ask, what's the recipe?
Yep.
Look, and then he says,
I don't know.
I asked my mama. She don't know. And that kind of, well, it's Old Dirty Bastard. There's no father to his style. And then he ends the line by, well, go ask your papa. And then he takes a deep breath. He's the Old Dirty Bastard. There's no father to his style. So there's some incoherent genius going on even in the freestyle. Yeah, he knows what he's doing.
Cool.
He's a star.
Oh, yeah.
He's a star.
Again, if I'd never heard his voice before, you can hear that in the voice.
And so this is just, you know, this is a wild night of the cousins. You know what I'm saying? Like playing into the alter ego of Bobby Digital. The Bobby Digital character in the album, there's a lot of misogyny and exploitation of women on there.
For sure. Yeah.
And so this and when you picked this song of the ones that I gave you, I was like, oh, that's cool. He kind of picked the one that I wanted to pick too. I thought that was interesting of the songs that I kind of gave you to pick from, that you picked the one I probably thought would have that I would have wanted to talk about the most.
Yeah. Now I picked it blind too, just like I'd never heard any of them. I mean, I listened to a little bit of them before, but I mean, I told you this then too. I picked this because the title is Kiss of the Black Widow. And the full title of the David Bowie album this comes from is The Rise and Fall of Ziggy, Stardust, and the Spiders from Mars. The Ziggy, Stardust, and the Spiders from Mars is like the fake band name, right? So it's like Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band. Like it's like Ziggy
Right.
Stardust and Spiders from Mars is like the band, the fake band name.
Right. It's
But
the alter ego band. Yeah.
So and Bowie has a bunch of them too. Like this is the first one, but we'll get into that later. But there were others later too. Like he has most. This is the most famous one. There's one called the next one's called Aladdin Sane. That's the one where you see where it has the lightning bolt on his face, like the album cover. Okay, that's Aladdin Sane.
So that's another alter ego.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
he had so many shape shifting things going on in his career, like even up to the very end, really. So yeah, he's an interesting dude for sure.
No, the RZA is a very interesting dude too. He's not as interesting as Bowie, I don't think, but
the list of people interesting as Bowie, like as far as like the multiplicity of personalities, and I'm not saying like multiple personality disorder. These are definitely like cosplay, like he's like dressing up for fun. Like it's not like schizophrenic or whatever. But
are you sure?
I'm pretty sure, yeah. Like I mean, you can see him like interacting. I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, I didn't live in his head, right? And I didn't know him like that. But none of the non-stage versions of him, all of them seem very like low-key, calm.
He's just an artful guy.
He's doing it for fun. Like he likes wearing wild stuff. Like it's just fun, or did in his younger times. He did much less as an older
I felt some Prince inspiration when I was kind of looking and going through some of Bowie's stuff. I was like, oh, did Prince pull some of his?
I'm sure he did. He's definitely one of those guys. I mean, the descendants of Bowie, I mean, are your like, I don't want to put Marilyn Manson on it, but like somebody who's like dressing up like that. And then you're like Depeche Mode, Duran Duran kind of things. Even like you're like Smashing Pumpkins kind of bands are descendants of Bowie too. That have like all these different styles and all these different like not personas necessarily, but yeah, Prince would be another one that definitely comes from that school of.
Well, I was looking at Bowie started, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm looking at it, it's like, oh, well, you know, that's right around the time of Prince's childhood. So it's like in early teen years. So,
Ziggy Stardust is 72, 71, 72, 73,
yeah,
like
that's
that time.
Yeah, Prince is like in junior high. So it's like I could totally see him taking an album like that. Because even the grooves and some of the melodies is really funky. It's really different. It's really trippy.
Yeah. It's cool stuff.
Good way. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Kiss of a Black Widow is just one of those things that kind of, I think it goes back to the origins of the Wu-Tang Clan. It feels like, you know, pre-Wu-Tang stuff. Like this is how Wu-Tang came to be, you know?
Because the rhymes are in weird places too. Like they don't rhyme, not necessarily not at the end of the lines, but like you can speak more to like what the actual technical terms for this, but like they rhyme in weird places. Like they're not standard or what you would expect.
They're the track is formatted, but the bar style is not, and that's what you're speaking to. They're not rhyming. They're not rhyming in any sort of technical meter or measure that's known in hip hop, which often happens when you really freestyle and you don't write it down, because sometimes, you know, the way your mind moves and the way the beat
moves, just the way it is.
Always synchronized. Now, some of your best guys are unsynchronized, and they'll synchronize it quick, and you can hear them. Like somebody like a Jay-Z or a Nas, they might start off on a freestyle like offbeat, but they'll immediately get on. So when I'm saying that this song is kind of cocaine, weed, laced and induced, that's the part right there. It's about the fact that they can't catch it. But if you listen to them, they're talking to each other and they keep going like no, stop doing that or do that. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, y'all are fucked up. But it's so hilarious. It's
great. Yeah.
It's so chemistry wise. It's so beautiful between the two of them. You're like, keep it. And
you can definitely tell they love each other. Like that's like you can even tell like RZA is trying to catch it a couple times and keep going, but he doesn't happen because he's like Bob Digel laid up beside the fucking hospital, but he repeats it like, you know, he's trying to find it and keep it going. But eventually at the end, you can just see they're like, they're laughing by the end of it.
Right. By the end of it, they're like, how long? It's about 3 minutes. You know what? Fuck it. We're done. Check. Yeah. And that's it. And that's kind of, there is something very, like Wu-Tang touched the raw and emotional nerve in hip hop heads. And I think this song is still touching that nerve, even though the quality isn't up to the standards of stuff they've already, like they're legendary by the time 1998 is rolling around.
Right.
It's been like November of 98 when Bobby Digital's coming out, they've officially been around for 5 years. They're already iconic.
Yeah.
So a song like this may seem like a throwaway, but it's only because they've made like 60 or 70 classic songs by now.
Yes, exactly. So just in comparison to,
right. It's in comparison to, and even on this album, this isn't the best song on the album. The best song on the album is probably NYC Everything, which has Method Man on it, which is actually one of Method Man's best verses that nobody ever talks about.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not familiar with that, but I know enough to know that when he's on point, he's one of the best.
Yeah, so the NYC Everything verse is one of his on point, I'm one of the best MC ever type of verses. It's just on the RZA's Bobby Digital album, so a lot of people missed it, but it's one of Meth's best performances as well. One interesting thing, I don't know what Bowie was doing, like production-wise, maybe differently with the Ziggy's, with Ziggy and Stardust and the whole thematic character and cosplay and all that. But one thing that is unique about Bobby Digital that is a change for RZA is that it is keyboard and synth heavy and not sample driven at all.
Okay.
And so, most of his early stuff, what RZA really got known for was taking brilliant, obscure samples, meshing them with with excerpts from Kung Fu flicks, and actually putting dope beats and dope MCs behind it. This is none of that. This is keyboard, synths, organs, and so it feels kind of very hip hop opera like. And where I think the Ziggy Stardust is more like rock star play, but same realm.
Yeah, for sure. The whole the album is. I mean, there's different schools of thought about this, but like the generally accepted idea of Ziggy Stardust is that he had a bunch of songs, like 2 or 3 of them probably went together as part of this like rock opera thing, and the other ones were not intended that way. And then when people started listening to it, they started like not writing in the storylines, but kind of like turning it into a story. Does that make sense? Like when you're like when like readers or listeners like superimpose their own experiences on things, and they so they're not creating a story where there's not one. But I don't think, or is generally that's the general consensus, is that he probably didn't intend it to be like a beginning to end rock opera kind of thing, like from like all 10 or 12 songs or whatever, but it kind of turned out that way. And he definitely like encouraged the myth that, oh yeah, I did that on purpose. Yeah, sure. Like,
when you
wink.
When you artistically go somewhere and you take fans with you, they can kind of breathe life into your stuff for you.
Yeah.
Like it takes on a life in a shape of its own when you're so
it did that for him. Yeah.
Well, I mean, so how big is he? He's like, this is like his 5th or 6th album, correct?
Oh, I have to look. It's one of the very early ones. But
so when you're saying one of the early ones, how many albums did he record? Like 20?
At least, yeah. Like Bowie.
Like what's his notoriety like? Because what you're explaining to me is somebody whose notoriety is to the point that his legend is starting to take shape for himself, a la Wu-Tang Clan. Like it's almost like, well, no, he's already legendary. I knew he was thinking like this. He's a genius,
No, he's at the top of Wikipedia, it says he has 26 studio albums plus 24 live ones. So yes, a bunch. Yeah. His first one was, let's see, his debut album 1968-9, and so it was early in the world.
So this might be some part of where his following is built, him doing something.
Yeah, this
cool
is one of his first breakthrough things.
Okay.
He has famous songs before this, or let me say it like this. There are songs that are famous now that were not necessarily then, like Space Oddity, which you wouldn't know from the time. That's the ground control to Major Tom. I could play it for you, but my ground control to Major Tom. Like he's like,
he's
like a man up in the spaceship and is like trying to get, and he has gone too far out into space, and is like dying essentially in space because he can't, like, he's gone too far for the whatever. That's Space Oddity. Man Who Sold the World actually was before this too. And Man Who Sold the World, the one that Nirvana covered, was a Bowie song. Yeah,
I didn't know that.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
So how did that do when he was,
it was not
right?
It was not a huge song that, I mean, it became Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars was his like huge like breakout hit, and that was like his fourth. I think I'm looking at this list now. It was like his fourth album.
Okay, so this is his coming out party.
Mm-hmm.
Figuratively.
But then the other songs, like The Man Who Sold the World in Space, like those songs became hits again because they kind of re-released them, and they became classics too.
Yeah. Right. It's almost like, let's give those another run again. I think a lot of people, another David Bowie, I guess, Prince contextualization. I think a lot of people forget that I Feel For You by Chaka Khan is actually on Prince's first album.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I Feel For You by Chaka Khan, that came out in, what is that, 1984? It's actually on Prince's first album in like 1978, 79. Like with him singing the vocals and doing everything. Mm-hmm. Her version, the version that he passed on to her and that they did together is far superior. But but that's one of those things about how like he took one of his early songs and well, he was totally bigger by then. So giving it to Chaka Khan in '84 was, different than him doing it as a virtually unknown in '78.
Right, exactly. No, and Bowie's one of those guys who did like lots of artists that were like late 60s, early 70s, mid 70s, did like the dance stuff in the 80s, like the dance songs or whatever. Like we talked about Joni Mitchell having a bad time doing that, and in the 80s, and that stuff is not great. Dylan did a little bit of it. Bowie actually did it well. He had, I mean, his song, I mean, you've probably heard his song Let's Dance. Like that's Bowie too. That's his 80s whatever. That's his version of that, and he did it well instead of like, what is this old person trying to do? But everybody was like, oh, this is really cool. That was 80s. Changes, that song too, like the yeah, sure. That's so he's got lots of different.
He transitioned well, and
he did it better than just about anybody. Is because it's hard to do that many different personas or different styles and do them all well. I mean, most old white people got to know him when he did a cover of Little Drummer Boy with Bing fucking Crosby. Like they're standing around like on a Christmas special, the two of them singing Little Drummer Boy, and it's really good too. And you're like, oh, this guy actually has singing chops too. He's not just like this.
He's not some weirdo.
Yeah. He has all of these things, right? Yeah.
Right. He's not some like artsy, like off the wall type of like, no, this guy's actually like a good singer, songwriter, composer. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can.
He's got all of that.
I mean, I know some of Bowie's stuff just because one of a good friend of mine and somebody happens to be a DJ, Holland, DJ Big H. He actually knows how big of a Prince fan that I am. And he's like, you're a Prince fan. He's like, so Bowie's like, so I've checked out a fair amount of Bowie's stuff. It's been a minute, but I think the stuff that I checked out of his was more the late 70s, early 80s stuff. So I wasn't even aware of the whole Ziggy Stardust thing.
Yeah. Ziggy Stardust actually became like too big, sort of. Like he did interviews later on in late 70s, early 80s, and later in his life where he talked about he performed essentially as Ziggy Stardust, as like that character 72, 73, and like had to retire that character because it was taking over his life. Like it wasn't, he was having trouble like as a human differentiating himself from that persona. No, and people were like yelling Ziggy, 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 like on the street and stuff like that. I mean, he's a very obviously a very distinctive looking human being. He's like 6 foot and
about to say he's tall, isn't he?
He's tall like, and skinny, and he's an instantly recognizable.
Well, he kind of looks like a model. He looks like a model.
He does.
Yeah. How many?
He was married to a model too.
We know very well. That's how I knew him
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? Before I had to listen to a lick of his music, I knew who he was married to.
Yeah.
But he himself, I mean, he looks like a model. How many like all time great like singers, artists can like actually say that? It's like no.
Yeah.
He's like
it's a short list. Yes.
Extremely short list. Yeah. So I can see why he stands out in a crowd. And it's funny, that could be like that's something that women actually deal with oftentimes. It's like, well, she's just beautiful. She can't sing.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of maybe felt like he dealt with some of that.
He might have. I don't know. I don't know that, but it would track. Like,
yeah, like this pretty MF got no chops. I know we went to Bobby Digital. There was a part of me that thought about taking something maybe from Andre 3000 instead.
Yeah, I thought about that too. Like he is one of those guys that kind of fits with the Bowie thing.
Because when you're talking, I'm like, well, if you're talking about Offspring, the closest thing Bowie would have to a hip hop Offspring would probably be 3000. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't know very much about like the different whatevers, but like he's the one who comes to my mind. Yes.
How about this? You're familiar with "She Lives in My Lap"?
Probably. If I heard it, I probably would be. It's not like one of those things that comes immediately to my brain.
Go listen to "She Lives in My Lap." Just listening to you talk, it's like I'm hearing "She Lives in My Lap" by Andre 3000 off the Love Below playing in my head. It's like, oh, that's that Bowie realm.
Okay.
That maybe like Andre existing, and so maybe we'll do another like Bowie song and see.
Yeah, he's got lots to pick from.
Well, you just said 26 studio and 24 live.
There's plenty. There's plenty, Bowie.
Yeah. So, I don't have too much more to offer about Kiss of the Black Widow in the background, to like Bobby Digital. I will say that it's like around this time, production-wise, RZA's production had started to slide in terms of what he traditionally did, and that was kind of the need for the production change too. Okay. And so this the synths on this sounds like the early Wu-Tang stuff. I mean, really, really raw, really, really sparse.
Okay. So. Now, what I want to ask you this too, like it makes more sense because I wrote a note about like the context of the song, like because there's sort of a story there ish. I mean, they're dicking around too, but like there's a story sort of there.
So the whole album is
so it makes more sense to me now that you said that it was like a comic book kind of character. Yeah. Like that makes sense. It seems like the story. Can I say what I think it is, and then you tell me if I'm like completely fucking off base or whatever. Like there's like a woman they're like fantasizing over almost that is someone who's like only like hanging around to get their money. I mean, Black Widows, like in the popular culture, other than a spider, means like somebody who marries you to like kill you and steal your money. Like that's obviously there's the other layer because the characters are black too, right? So there's another thing going on. But I mean, there's that line that woman says in the middle, like where's the beer and the weed at, or whatever. Like she's just using him for that's kind of my impression.
Glad that you brought that up. So
because what she said when she says that like has nothing, it relates none at all to anything that he just said.
This is like 3 a.m. and there's nobody in the studio but these two guys and the groupies.
Okay.
And oftentimes that's how it is. It's like, women that hang out at 3 a.m. are usually trouble love. You know what I mean? And so this is like a trouble love song, but it's also going, like I said, back into the life of a single Black young hip hop recording artist. And so it's late, you're with your homie, y'all are tore up, y'all are trying to record. And you hear all the bitches, we loved you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's trouble love going on, which oftentimes, like too oftentimes happens like in the Black community when it comes to our hip hop artists and our athletes. So I think it's kind of like it's a satire because there's some truth in jest to it. And so like, they're like kind of keeping it real, but they're keeping it funny.
Yeah.
So that you don't think that it's real, but it's like, no, it's real.
There's some real underneath this.
Well, that's why I like that you brought up one of the things that I love about the song is when the girl pops in, like, yeah, Bobby, where the beer and the weed at? Like, nobody's listening to what the fuck you're saying, dude. I came here to get your money. And like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And usually when you're a young Black man and you're in the hip hop sphere, women like that are always around. You know what I mean? And so it just kind of comes with
because he says, I forget what, I think it's RZA that says, like, you set me up for the kiss of the Black Widow. Like,
he set me up for the kiss of the Black Widow. Yeah. I mean, he's talking about pretty much how lust overtakes a young black man in the sphere of the hip hop world. It's just there's a lot of hyperbole and satire going on too.
Yeah. And you see that in Ziggy Stardust too. Like, I mean, this is his, like,
yes.
I mean, he's androgynous too, but like he is this is like the Robert Plant rock star, the tight jeans and I mean, he's saying there's a few, I mean, he's well hung with a snow white tan and making love with his ego. I mean, there's lines like that are like pumping himself up, like the Ziggy Stardust character up in the same way you hear RZA and ODB doing it in Kiss of a Black Widow.
I thought about Robert Plant when I was listening to the Ziggy Stardust song, actually. So like, I'm glad that I was actually on point with that, because he crossed my mind when I was
that
listening.
kind of,
No, like the guy that, because it almost feels like Bowie is the type of writer that pulls from his inspirations. And so I was kind of thinking about, well, who could he be talking about, inspired, moved by? And Robert Plant was actually the first guy that crossed my mind. So
he's a lot weirder than Robert Plant, but I mean, like the Ziggy Stardust character would have been dressed in like jumpsuits and like they would have like dyed their, like, not just him, but all of them would have dyed their hair bright colors. But I mean, that's an outlandish outfit in 1970 or 71 period. It's a more outlandish outfit when you're like 6'5" and a skinny white guy with like bright green hair and like a electric colored jumpsuit. Like he's making himself even more distinctive than he was. Like the character Ziggy Stardust was even more distinctive. So yeah, he was, and then eventually, I mean, this was like girls screaming at you kind of character too, and it becomes too much. Like you can't separate the David from Ziggy, because they're all screaming Ziggy, 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 right?
Well, I think that's the same thing that's going on too, because I think this is how things kind of revert back to their origins. And so in 1998, RZA and Wu-Tang Clan are the biggest hip hop stars on earth.
Right.
And so what happens when you're the biggest hip hop stars on earth? Well, a lot of drugs and a lot of women. See, it was easy for him to get in character for Bobby Digital. See, he's playing Bobby Digital like this is the young version of me. But it's like, really, you had become that version again. He was, Wu-Tang Forever, has, from the article you sent me, got recorded out in LA. He was spending a lot of time in LA in the late 90s. That's how he got into Hollywood with Ghost Dog and all that. Right. And so this is around the time when that thing was happening. So he's kind of gone Hollywood a little bit. And so he's kind of masking his going Hollywood by making it seem like, no, this was my origins. It's like, well, yeah, it's your origins, but it's also what you're doing now. You know what I mean? You're in LA with a lot of women, a lot of weed, a lot of other things. And, you're having a good time. That's where his house is now. That's where he lives, Okay. So there's a little masking of the original character going on intentionally too. Yeah. To exercise the demons of his current exploits.
Yeah. It's a good way to say that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the best thing that I pulled from is that, well, both of these guys are about 4 or 5 years into their career, and fame is starting to become too much for both of them.
Yeah. And so they're creating this like alternate ego to like be able to be something else for a little while. They're almost acting.
It's escapist. It's an escapism. Like, and essentially, when you're an artist, I mean, isn't that what we all kind of do artistically on some sort of level? Is like kind of run out the back door with our work. So this is like an escape route for both artists that I both see. It's both of the tones are lustful and over sexualized too, which I think is striking. It's like, okay, so we as men, as artists, tend to create alter egos, and immediately the sexualization of it kind of takes precedence. That's one of the things that I noticed too.
It's just like, this is what I would do if kind of,
because Bobby Digital, the album is like this too. There's a song on there, Domestic Violence, that's very comparable to Kendrick Lamar's We Cry Together.
Okay, yeah.
In terms of how the dialogue is happening between the male and female counterparts. I sent you that other song, My Lovin' Is Digi, which is like supposed to be kind of like one of the love songs on the album.
It's a good song, but
No, I like My Lovin' Is Digi. The beat is really funky.
Yeah.
But that's just one of those things. And so I think it's just kind of funny how we as male artists highlight our sexual exploits when we create alter egos. What do you think about that? There's something psychological about that.
Yeah, there is. There's, and that's one of the things that I wrote about. And it probably is true for Ziggy Stardust too. So that's one of the things that I wrote about the Bobby Digital song is that it's a fantasy, right? Like it's a thing that you're inventing a character that can do things that you wouldn't be able to do. I mean, it's the same as a superhero myths. It's the same as comic book characters. It's the same as for any of those kind of things. You're inventing somebody who can do something that you wish you could.
Well, I think what has happened is like, well, when you've done all the absurd worldly things that you can do with women because of your superstardom, what's going to give you the next high? You have to create a whole nother world, you know?
Oh, cool. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're creating a whole nother world because actually these things they're talking about, it's like, no. These are the guys that get to do these things. They're getting all the women and all the money, all the things and all the
trappings of fame. Yes.
Yeah, all the lustful things that come with fame. Well, these guys have already been bequeathed those things early in their career. I mean, Bowie's 6'5" and a good-looking guy and is a rock star. So I mean, like he was getting laid before Ziggy Stardust.
Yes, for sure. Like he could have even if he was not a musician, like just as
if he wasn't a musician, he would still be out here getting it. In the RZA's case, he's the biggest producer in hip hop from 1993 to 97. That's a lot of girls. Wu-Tang's traveling the world. They're on tour with Rage Against the Machine.
That's not a thing that I knew.
Yeah. So when we were in high school, Wu-Tang Forever comes out June 3rd, 1997. So that is literally the end of our first year at West Charlotte, right?
I think that's right. End of 97, 98, 90. Yeah. That would have been the end of our sophomore year. Yeah.
Yeah. End of our sophomore year, 10th grade year. So that summer, Rage Against the Machine and Wu-Tang Clan went on tour together.
Oh, wow.
That's like the stories from that tour is like some of the wildest stuff that you ever hear. So it's like RZA's hanging out with Scott De La Roca. So when you're hearing Bobby Digital a year later, I mean, no. They are hip hop's rock stars and have been hanging out with rock stars.
Right.
And RZA's now living in LA, living a rock star Hollywood life. And so it's like, well, yeah, Bobby Digital is the young you, but you really made it the young you with money, which is actually you now.
Yeah. It's also like trying to it feels to me anyway, like the rawness of it feels like you're trying to like reclaim something that you lost. Like it's one of those, you're trying to like do music like you used to be able to do it before all of the fame and all of the everything. Like, I don't know, John Lennon, like after the Beatles would like put out records that were like almost like classic rock and roll kind of records that sounded like Chuck Berry and those kind of artists.
Or natural.
Yeah. And the end of like the Let It Be album actually has, like the album, not the song, but has several songs on it that they recorded originally, like not recorded originally, but wrote originally, like before they ever became famous. Because, you know, Paul and John knew each other from the time they were like 13 or something like that. So
didn't know that.
The song Two of Us specifically is a song about like their childhood. And it is a very like classic rock and roll-ish kind of sounding song. So it has that feel to me, the Bobby Digital thing does. Where he's gone around the world and can't come back home again. It's like trying to find that thing that he used to have, which is why he's just like probably just got a mic and is just fucking around with his friend in the living room. Like is that his cousin? Like that's just that kind of feel.
It's definitely stripped down. That's why I brought up. It's like, well, he didn't even dig for any samples on this album. He's just straight up playing like organs, keyboards, synths, you know, drum lines and bass lines. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it is very like stripped down to the origins. Because here's the thing, and I've always said this, it's like, well, the beautiful things about his beats was always the intricacies of them. The beats themselves, you know, like he's not the best like boom bap producer. There are other producers like a DJ Premier, a Pete Rock, a Kanye West. Like their inherent drums and drum patterns are better. But for about 4 or 5 years, it's like he just took everything and put it in a bag and it just came out a certain type of way. He's a scientist like that with beat, but not the greatest fundamental beat maker. And so this was kind of him being the fundamental beat maker that he was, again, to some mixed results.
He's trying out some shit. Like
trying out some stuff. Yeah, he's. I mean, people in 1998, people are talking about him like he might be the greatest hip hop producer of all time. So he's feeling himself a little bit. So he feels like he has room to explore and all that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's cool. I want to show you this too. This is another. It's not really a hip hop thing, but people try to make it into a hip hop like thing. This is the cover of can you see that? The cover of Ziggy Stardust. You see what it says on that sign right there?
What? No.
It says K West. So and that was on there in 1971 to whatever. Right. So it's obviously it's not a legend really. It's like a stupid internet rumor that like he like foretold the coming of Kanye West. But it's clearly not. But like it's just a fun like
right
overlap kind of thing.
It's one of those fun music things where people like to pull it out of the sky, but that's what you can pull out of the sky when somebody like Bowie is so big, or Kanye, like people.
Yeah, and they're both kind of weird dudes, right? Like so they're.
The belief system of their followers is high. That's what I was about to say. Like their followers believe in them. Mm-hmm. And so it's like when you put something like that up, it's like, no, I can totally see the followers of both sides somewhere in the middle being like, no, we see that. Yes.
No. I mean, he even on the Ziggy Stardust song, he calls the character the leper messiah. Like, like is that kind of and Bowie doesn't think that of himself, or didn't think that of himself, but like this is the character that's the.
Right. And so what's that foreshadowing of Kanye? Is that what they're pretty much saying? That that's ridiculous.
It is. It's funny though. I mean, because it does kind of fit. Like it does.
When you piece it together, like this is the beautiful thing about music. It makes even the incoherent coherent. You can piece it together, you know? Like I've written poems using the song titles of my favorite hip hop albums and able to make like the whole sequence about it that would make you think, like in order of the songs, it would make you think like, oh, did they intend for that to be that way?
Almost never.
Or am I just like high out my mind and writing like, you know what
I We haven't really talked about songwriting process a ton, but that feel like they come from somewhere else. Like they come from like not from your conscious brain. And so it's not until many years later and you go back and listen to them and you're like, oh, this is actually about this stuff that I was going through or whatever, I'm not, at least when I'm writing these songs, like I'm not conscious of that as I'm writing them. I mean, and this is a thing that I learned like as a poet writer, like in college or whatever, but most writers have no idea they do sort of know what they're writing about, but like the larger meaning of a text, a song, or whatever, both becomes apparent later, and it also is understood later. Like it's like it is, and I guess that's what I was talking about with the Bowie, like becoming a rock opera kind of deal. Like it is once you release a piece of art out into the world, it isn't yours really anymore. It is what is co-created with the fans and the readers and the listeners and all that stuff. Like everybody brings their own stuff to it, and it becomes another thing, regardless of what you intended. It's almost like what you intend doesn't matter, really. It's what it means to other people.
I think, I mean, and you know this as a writer too, I really do believe that like in our subconscious mind, even though we have a free will, intent, may even have content and concept, I do believe at times that as writers, our minds go into places that we're not even totally aware that maybe exist within the depths of our minds, and even some things that maybe exist in the depths within our soul. And sometimes I really do feel like, well, you know, you could be receiving messages from things that are beyond your comprehension, for better or for worse, when recording music. You know, devils are instruments, you know? And so I was always conscious as a writer about like where my message came from, because a lot of the time I would write something, I'd be like, man, that shit was dope. And I'd be like, where did that come from?
Yeah, exactly.
And sometimes where it comes from is like not a healthy place, if that makes sense. No, it's not a good place.
Yeah. And so some of it's exorcism, right? Some of it is like you're working sort of, or I feel like this anyway, like most of the songs I wrote in the span, like when I was playing with my friend Sam, are really dark. Like, And when I go back and listen to them now, I did not feel like I was necessarily struggling then, but when you listen to them, you can hear it in there. Like, and it's, in many ways, I think it's a way to work through that in a healthy, productive way, as opposed to, you know, I don't know,
No,
throwing hatchets at walls or something.
I think the way that you express about the exercising of some demons, I think that's actually both what's going on with the Ziggy Stardust and with the Bobby Digital characters. I mean, don't want to get too religious with it, but there is like an exorcism of sorts of like the things of the malcontent and sinful and lustful and envious things that we do, how we like to purge ourselves from those things as artists, and the way of cleansing ourselves is through the catharticism of the expression of the word and the art and the music. So I can see all of those things totally like existing right there within both of these alter egos, but also in like just a lot of music at the whole. That's why I was kind of contextualizing. It's like, man, we get like really like sexualized like whoremongers like when we do alter egos. You know what I mean? There's something to
and you
that.
see that in superheroes too. Like you see that as like the biggest and the strongest and get all the girl. Like, I mean, it's still that
right
in superhero stories too. And when you're being an artist or when you're creating art, you can create things or go to places that people can't, that normal humans can't. Like you're doing that. And I mean, it's interesting because I've thought about this as we've had this conversation, that one of the differences between the two is that they're coming at it from opposite ends of stardom. Like, because RZA, from what you've described, is like not at the end of his stardom, but like has already become famous and is kind of looping back around to his beginnings and creating this alter ego that is salacious. And then, but Bowie is sort of famous, but not like really. I mean, he's like playing shows and stuff, but like he's not. The Ziggy Stardust character is what launches him. So this is like the beginning of his arc, not the end.
So RZA's landing. So it's like, how about this? Like, he's been around the world the last 5 years, and he's coming home after 5 years of being gone, and he's landing and he's touching down again.
Right.
He's not taking off. He's touching down. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And Bowie would have done that, 2 or 3 years later. With when he, like, I think Aladdin Sane actually is the next one, or one of the next. It's definitely the next character, but that's like mid-late 70s. That's the lightning bolt face character. And that's one of those wider culture things. Like, even if you don't know anything about David Bowie, like if you saw the picture of like the white guy with the tall hair and like the lightning bolt.
Mel, I know what you're talking about.
Like everybody knows what that is.
Hey y'all, sometimes it's hard to figure out where to end these freewheeling awesome conversations. So thanks for sticking with us till the end. It was a lot of fun to record, and I hope you enjoyed it. Hit that like button and subscribe to our channel if you think it's worthwhile content, and then we'll see you around next time. Take care, y'all.